Irving.
The government rejects fresh calls to release the advice on the legality of the Iraq war. Lawyers for anti-war protests are demanding information to help prepare their defense. More anarchy on the streets in Haiti as President Aristide insists he will not resign. And police launch a murder hunt as a young mother is stabbed to death in front of her baby. Good evening. Downing Street has rejected new demands to publish the advice it received from the Attorney General's office on the legal basis for the war in Iraq. The campaigning group Greenpeace is demanding access to the advice given by government lawyers so that it can defend 14 activists in court following anti-war protests last year. Our political correspondent John Andrew reports.
These were the first of a series of protests at a military port in Southampton, weeks before Britain went to war. Later, 14 Greenpeace activists were arrested and charged with trespass and criminal damage. Now, their lawyers say that for them to get a fair trial, they need to see the government's full legal advice justifying the war.
Most people at the time thought the war was illegal. The defendants thought it was illegal and unjustified. So the full advice, setting out the facts, is very important.
This week, prosecutors dropped their case against Catherine Gunn, a former intelligence officer charged with breaking the Official Secrets Act. There was speculation that she walked free because her lawyers demanded to see the Attorney General's full legal advice on going to war, a claim emphatically denied by the government. But ministers say the advice must remain confidential.
We're quite clear about the Attorney General's advice. It says that the war was legal. We know what it says because we've got the very clear summary. There have been extensive discussions about what's in there. We don't need to see the full published advice.
This week, Claire Short added to the government's problems with her claims that British agents bugged the phone calls of the UN Secretary-General in the run-up to war. But at Labour's Scottish conference in Inverness today, the party made it clear that despite real anger over her behaviour, she won't be expelled or disciplined.
I'm not going to make her a martyr or anything like that. They're not making her a martyr. There she is. She's not a martyr. She is someone who's been totally, grossly irresponsible in what she's did.
This week, Tony Blair has been trying to concentrate on domestic issues. But whether it's through former disgruntled cabinet ministers or through the courts, the issue of Iraq and questions over the legality of the war continue to dog the government. John Andrew, BBC News, Downing Street.
Hundreds of people, many of them armed, have continued to loot the capital of Haiti. The country's president, Jean-Bertrand Aristide, has called for calm, but says resigning is out of the question. Rebel forces say they now control around half of the country. They took the second largest city, Cape Haitian, a week ago, and since then have continued to march south. They now control the town of Mirabelais, just 25 miles from the capital, Port-au-Prince. From there, Ben Brown reports.
Haiti is a country on the verge of self-destruction. The rebels are closing in now on the capital, Port-au-Prince. But these are just some of the gunmen still loyal to President Aristide, who insist they will defend him. They've built roadblocks and burning barricades to protect the city. No one, though, seems sure when the rebel attack will finally come. This is the presidential palace in Port-au-Prince, and it's where Jean-Bertrand Aristide's die-hard supporters say they will fight their last stand if they have to, because they know if they lose control of this building, then they've lost power in Haiti. The men in masks are called Shipman after mythical fire-breathing monsters. In fact, they're violent thugs who terrorize the government's opponents. Washington has called on President Aristide to rein in the Shipman, and he has appealed to his supporters for calm. Even so, bodies still litter the capital from the orgy of violence there's been here. Looting is now almost routine. So a frantic airlift is underway to evacuate foreigners from Haiti before the final battle for Port-au-Prince, if there is to be one. At one embassy compound, people race to catch what may be the last helicopters out of here. And at the airport, there's an equally frenzied exodus. Here, 200 passengers desperately try to get themselves onto a light aircraft with only 9 seats available. It's bound for the safety of the neighbouring Dominican Republic. And of course there are plenty of Haitians who want to leave as well. For the most part their only way out is on flimsy boats, but usually they're chased, intercepted and turned back by American Coast Guard vessels just off the shoreline. The last thing Washington wants is an influx of thousands of Haitian boat people. Ben Brown, BBC News, Port-au-Prince.
Police are tonight hunting the killer of a young mother who was stabbed to death in an alleyway as she pushed her baby in a pram. 25-year-old Melanie Horridge was attacked in Chorley in Lancashire yesterday evening. The baby was unhurt.
It was a group of teenagers who found the young mother last night slumped on the ground along this alleyway. They'd come to investigate when they heard her 4-month-old baby Oliver screaming in his pram. Melanie Horridge had serious neck injuries, but she was still alive. The 20-year-old mother of 3 children died soon after an ambulance got her to hospital.
As yet, we've no suggestion at all as to any motive for the attack. A post-mortem is being held at this moment. I haven't got the results obviously, but we can say that she's suffered significant wounds to her neck and hands, and we believe as a result of a knife attack.
Lancashire police say Melanie Horridge fought bravely against her attacker. She lived with her partner about half a mile from where she was murdered. Detectives have appealed for witnesses and are speaking to family, friends and neighbours to get a better background picture for their inquiry.
I think it's terrible what's happened, really terrible. It's on your own doorstep.
I feel sorry for that little baby that's left without a mother.
Tonight, friends were still bringing flowers to the spot where the young mother was killed. Melanie Horridge was attacked on her way to make a call from a public phone box. She'd left her mother's home nearby and was pushing her baby son in his pram. Detectives are anxious to speak to anybody who might have been around this alleyway last night when the attack happened. John Thorne, BBC News, Chorley.
The Sinn Féin president, Gerry Adams, has warned that the peace process in Northern Ireland is facing its greatest crisis. At the party's annual conference in Dublin, Mr Adams rejected calls for Sinn Féin to be excluded from the current talks at Stormont because of recent allegations against the IRA. He said they were now ready to do business with the unionists.
Sinn Féin aren't exactly the establishment, but they're now firmly in the political mainstream. 10 years ago, this conference was subject to Irish broadcasting censorship. Now Gerry Adams' speech is transmitted live nationwide. And the party refused to be embarrassed by last week's incident in Belfast, where 4 men were arrested and another set free from a van. The police were adamant it was the work of the IRA. Why all the fuss, asked Mr Adams. His answer, an excuse to attack his party ahead of elections, both local and European. He accused his unionist opponents of macho posturing.
Sooner or later, and sooner rather than later, we and unionists must begin a real dialogue designed to move us all beyond the impasse of the present into a living, hopeful future in which they, as well as we, tell the British government to butt out so that they, as well as we, can stand on our own feet.
Mr Adams insisted that only Republicans had met all their commitments under the Good Friday Agreement, but all the other parties in the review of the political deadlock say that counts for naught if the IRA is still active. If David Trimble does take his party out of the talks process next week, it will continue. It would collapse, though, if Ian Paisley were to walk as well. And Sinn Féin still reckon that they're in a very strong position, both tactically and electorally. Dennis Murray, BBC News, Dublin.
The General Medical Council, the watchdog which regulates doctors, is being accused of failing to protect patients. That's according to a leaked letter from an inquiry into the Harold Shipman murders. But the GMC says it doesn't favour doctors over patients and has already begun a programme of reform. Sophie Hutchinson reports.
After 3 years, the inquiry into Britain's most prolific serial killer is nearly over. While working as a GP, Harold Shipman is believed to have murdered at least 215 patients. Just how he got away with it for so long is at the heart of the inquiry. According to a leaked letter, the doctor's watchdog, the General Medical Council, is facing damning criticism from the inquiry. The council, which oversees the self-regulation of doctors, is accused of being overly secretive, self-serving and biased in favour of doctors. It's blamed for failing to lay down clear policies so as to properly reflect its claimed objective of protecting patients. But the GMC is insisting it's already made major improvements to the way doctors are monitored.
We've had to update our procedures in order to make sure that we protect patients and deliver what society requires. And if it emerges that we are not yet fully aligned to do that, then of course we'll take such further steps as the inquiry might recommend.
The watchdog is now waiting to see what will be in the report when the inquiry finishes. If the criticisms of the GMC are included in the Shipman inquiry's final report, it could mean dramatic changes for doctors, with an end to self-regulation in order to better protect patients. Sophie Hutchinson, BBC News at the GMC.
Dozens of gay couples have exchanged wedding vows in New York State, and hundreds more are waiting to follow suit, despite efforts by the White House to stop same-sex marriages. Last week, President Bush said he would back a constitutional amendment banning gay marriage across the U.S.
I declare you husband and husband. It's not everyone's idea of marriage. It is anything but traditional. This small New York State community is now at the center of a row which is dividing American public opinion. The youthful mayor of New Paltz knows his decision to perform same-sex weddings is highly controversial, but he's been inspired by the lead of San Francisco and other communities which are also marrying gays and lesbians. For him, all of this is a question of equality.
The bottom line is the laws of the state of New York and the Constitution of the state of New York don't mention gender at all. It's completely neutral on this issue. And as far as I can tell, as long as the law is neutral and the Constitution requires equal protection, the genders of the people involved are irrelevant.
There have now been more than 3,000 same-sex weddings in the United States over the past few weeks, despite polls which suggest that most Americans think it's a bad idea. It all means President Bush is now insisting there must be a constitutional amendment to strictly define marriage as the union between a man and a woman. This issue is being forced to the center of the political stage in this election year. For now, it seems a safe bet that there will be more same-sex marriages in the coming days and weeks. In New Paltz, there's now a waiting list of 350 gay and lesbian couples from across the state and beyond. This tiny community has been overwhelmed by demand. Jeremy Cook, BBC News, New York.
Now with news of another win for Arsenal and the rest of the day's sport, here's Hazel.
Thanks, Darren. Good evening to you. Yes, Arsenal do look like Premiership champions in waiting tonight after stretching their lead at the top of the table to 9 points. Highbury midfielder Robert Pires was on target against Charlton within the first couple of minutes. It was his 50th strike for his club. 3 minutes later, Thierry Henry added a second as Arsenal went on to win it 2-1. Meanwhile, Manchester United slipped up yet again, this time at Fulham. United striker Louis Saha did score against his old club, but Fulham came back to earn the draw, which could signal the end of the Champions title hopes. In fact, it's Chelsea who now move into second place in the table after Ida Gudjonsson stole their winner at Manchester City. And in the other matches, Blackburn and Southampton drew 1-1. Everton got their first win in 10 games against Aston Villa, and there were no goals in the key relegation contest between Leicester City and Wolves. So that league table makes pleasant reading for Arsenal fans. They're now 9 points ahead of their nearest rivals, Chelsea, who move above Manchester United on goal difference. Meanwhile, at the other end, Wolves have climbed out of the bottom three thanks to their draw today. Leeds United and Portsmouth are both in action tomorrow. In Scotland, third-placed Hearts were held to a scoreless draw by Dunfermline, but there were plenty of goals at Kilmarnock, who beat Dundee 4-2 at Rugby Park, thanks in part to the efforts of the aptly named Danny Invincible, who scored twice. It was Killy's first win for 10 matches. Celtic and Rangers are both in action tomorrow. Now, the rules of football are changing. The game's governing body, FIFA, has announced that the golden goal will be scrapped after this year's European Championship finals, and you won't see much of these celebrations either. Any player who removes his or her shirt will definitely be booked. In Rugby Union's Powergen Cup, the 10 times winners of the competition Bath lost 21-10 to Leeds in their quarter-final. Meanwhile, Newcastle Falcons beat not only London Irish but atrocious weather conditions to book their semi-final place.
For the Falcons, with a huge...
The best display at Newcastle's Kingston Park came before kick-off when the ground staff beat the elements. The home side apparently switched to blue shirts for visibility, and that was the substantial Stuart Grimes ploughing through in the corner for Newcastle's first try. The recuperating Johnny Wilkinson braved a half-time appearance and then warmly watched his replacement, Dave Walder, take control of the game. After Epitaoni nudged aside the London Irish defence, Walder hung around to take the ball and score. Newcastle were making the most of the conditions and Walder was hitting his targets. His drop goal finished the scoring in almost Wilkinson-esque style. 19 points for him, satisfactory for Newcastle.
It wasn't a great game, but I think what pleases me most is we defended really well, particularly towards the end. Showed a lot of spirit. We scored the 2 tries in the game, and I think we deserve to win.
Well, Walder's place is safe for the semi-final as Newcastle brush off Wilkinson's absence like their February snow. Joe Wilson, BBC News.
In golf, Northern Ireland's Darren Clark has powered into the semi-finals of the WGC match play in California. The Ulsterman, who won this event 4 years ago, hit one of the shots of the championship when he holed his third at the 8th for this long distance eagle. He went on to beat Jerry Kelly of America 5-3. And right now in his semi, Darren Clark currently 1 down against Davis Love. Tiger Woods leads Australia's Stephen Leaney in the other match. And that's it tonight. Darren.
All right, Hazel, thank you. Now, before we go, a reminder of the main news tonight. Downing Street has rejected new demands to publish the advice it received from the Attorney General's office on the legal basis for the war in Iraq. Well, that's the latest. There'll be news throughout the night over on BBC News 24. But from Hazel and from me, good night.
Hello there, it's another very cold and frosty February night on the cards. As we can see, temperatures well below freezing, especially over the snowfields of Scotland. And also ice is going to be an additional hazard, especially where we saw the wintry showers through eastern Scotland and eastern England during today. In fact, we've still got to keep an eye on that snow, especially through Yorkshire, Lincolnshire and East Anglia at the moment into the night, and then later on tonight and into the morning for Essex and Kent. Now there's some uncertainty about the snow, but there is the possibility of up to 10 centimetres in a few places. Now we can see it running southwards as we go through the night and into the morning. Probably the heaviest of the snow in the morning is going to be in Suffolk and to the east of London, and it'll become lighter and patchier as we head through the afternoon, but still some wintry showers you notice in the Channel Islands. Elsewhere across England, Wales, southern and eastern Scotland, it'll be dry, it'll be bright, and we'll see some winter sunshine around, and that's true too for eastern parts of Northern Ireland. But out to the west, along with western and northern Scotland, it's going to be dull and dreary here, quite misty and murky, little bits of rain and sleet, not amounting to much, but also a flurry of snow too. It can't be ruled out over Highland Scotland. Now many places are going to be cold, particularly in the southeast and that strong wind, but turning milder in the northwest, so we'll see thawing of snow here, and that'll continue during the early part of next week as it turns less cold. For Monday and Tuesday, certainly dry with some sunshine. Bye for now.
We're late, James.